The first thing you learn when you work at Glacier Point Weather Research Station is that the weather isn't the only thing out here trying to kill you. That's the truth no one puts in the job description. They talk about recording meteorological data and supporting climate studies. What they don't mention is the silence that feels alive, the wind that calls you by name, or the rules you have to follow if you want to make it through the winter in one piece. My name is Daniel Price. I've worked at Glacier Point in Alaska for over 6 years. I thought I was ready for it when I took the job, grew up in the Midwest, knew a thing or two about snow, and figured the isolation might even be peaceful. I was wrong. To outsiders, Glacier Point is just another snowbound outpost, one of dozens scattered across the far north to log wind speeds, track pressure changes, and study how storms form. But anyone who's actually served a winter here knows Glacier Point is different. We don't just measure the weather here, we live inside something that watches us from within it. The station sits in the middle of a white nowhere, more than 200 miles from the nearest town. There's no road and only a helicopter when the weather behaves, which is rare. For 4 straight months every winter, the snow closes around us like a coffin lid. There are no supply runs, no visitors. No escape unless you want to walk until your lungs freeze. On my first day, Station Chief Karen O'Malley didn't waste time with small talk. She handed me a sheet of paper that looked like it had been photocopied 100 times. 6 rules. She read them aloud in a voice as flat and cold as the landscape outside. 1. Never open the door after 10 p.m., even if someone you know is knocking. 2. If the radio starts whispering, power it off immediately. Log the time and do not try to listen. 3. Do not go outside during a Category 7 storm or higher, no matter what distress signal you hear. 4. When checking remote sensors, go alone and be back by sunset. 5. Do not answer when someone calls your name unless you can see their face. 6. When the wind shifts direction suddenly, everyone gets to the sealed bunker within 60 seconds. I remember looking at her and saying, "Why, what's out there?" She didn't blink. Follow them if you want to live through the winter. At first, I chalked it up to extreme caution. Up here, a single mistake can mean frostbite or worse. The wind chill can strip the heat from your body faster than you can run back inside. It made sense to have rules, but these weren't safety protocols. They were something else. The kind of rules people don't write down unless something bad has already happened. It didn't take long before I started noticing things that didn't make sense. At the far end of the north corridor, there's a triple-barred door, reinforced with metal so thick it warps the frame. Nobody uses it. Nobody even talks about it. But during storms, when the walls groan and the snow pounds against the siding, I swear I hear faint, deliberate knocks from the other side. Sometimes scratching, slow and patient, like whatever's there knows it has all the time in the world. Illy, one of the senior techs, wears industrial-grade earmuffs almost constantly, even when he's sleeping in the bunkhouse. I once asked him if the noise from the wind bothered him that much. He shook his head and muttered, "Out here, silence is the last thing you want." He didn't explain and I didn't push. Then there's Chief O'Malley herself. I've never seen her sleep in her office, not once. On nights when the air is dead calm and the stars are so clear you feel like you could step off the roof into them, she still drags a cot into the sealed bunker and bolts the door from the inside. The longer you stay, the more you feel it, that hidden order in everything we do here. The rules aren't just for avoiding frostbite or getting lost in whiteout conditions. They're to keep something else out, something that travels inside the weather, the way a splinter rides under skin. You can't see it directly, but you can feel it in the moments before a storm breaks, when the wind dies and the world goes still, too still. I used to think the weather was unpredictable here. Now I know that's wrong. The storms don't just happen, they arrive. Like something living making its way toward us. And every time they do, I remember those rules and the way Chief O'Malley looked at me when she said them. Because the weather isn't the only thing coming for us out here, it's just the only part you can see. By the third winter, I could read a storm without touching a dial. You feel it here first, a pressure in the sinuses, a faint metallic taste under the tongue, a static prickle across the scalp. That year, the storms didn't just announce themselves, they studied us. They came in slow, as if walking the perimeter, finding where the walls flexed, where the seals breathed. They didn't only roar, they spoke. The wind braided together 100 thin voices so you couldn't tell laughter from sobbing. It sounded like a crowded room just out of sight, everyone talking about you without saying your name until they did. It was near 11 p.m. when the knocking started, 3 short taps, a pause too long. The rhythm landed with intent. I was alone in the supply corridor, counting cans while the shelves chattered in their brackets. Rule 1 walked into my head in Karen O'Malley's voice. Never open the door after 10 p.m. I should have walked away. Instead, I checked the peephole. He stood on the concrete pad, haloed by the yellow porch light and blowing snow. His face had the color of old wax. No earmuffs, just naked ears in 30 below wind. That was wrong. Illy wore those muffs like a religion. His lips moved slow, as if speaking through gel. Daniel, open up, it's freezing. The problem hit me like falling through ice. 5 minutes earlier, I'd passed Illy asleep in the bunker, head tilted back, muffs clamped tight. My palm stayed on the latch, but I didn't turn it. The knocking shifted to fingernails dragging across metal, a dry comb on a drum, the vibration climbing the jam into my teeth. Then nothing, no footsteps leaving, no shadow moving away. Only a sudden cleanness, like the air had blinked. The heater kicked on. Somewhere in the building, a pipe ticked 3 times as if answering. Morning came in a pale slab. Rule 4 put me on the ridge route alone. The sky was the color of tin, the sun a smear behind cloud. Snow squeaked under my boots in little broken violin sounds. Halfway to the 3rd anemometer, I saw tracks, only they weren't. Each print was a shallow spiral pressed into the crust. A whirl without heel or toe, no step length you could measure. They trailed directly to the sensor, which was bent at a prayer angle, guy wire singing. I crouched, breath fogging, gloved fingers examining the warped casing. The handheld crackled in my chest pocket. It wasn't the usual snow static, it had cadence, almost breath. Then, Daniel, turn around. It was my voice, not an impression mine. Only stretched thin, like you'd pulled it over a frame that didn't fit. I snapped the radio off, but the whisper didn't obey. It slipped past my ears into the inner place where thoughts echo. Daniel, turn around, patient. Certain I would, I didn't. I fixed the anemometer with clumsy, fast hands, eyes on the metal, not the world. The spiral prints waited by my boots like coiled string. When I finally stood and looked back toward the station, a gust lifted the surface powder and unwound the spirals in a single breath, as if embarrassed to be seen. That night I found Chief O'Malley in the comms room, sleeves rolled, hair pinned up like a woman braced for surgery. She listened without interrupting. Then said, "We call them the carried wind." The name made the room feel smaller. "They come with the big ones," she went on, gaze skimming my shoulder to the porthole where frost ferns were colonizing the glass. "They borrow the gale, put shape in it. They call your name until the name feels like a door. If you answer," she stopped, her jaw tightened. "You don't come back." She told me about the shifts. Once a storm hits Category 7. The wind begins changing direction again and again, as if circling a drain. Each shift tightens the signal. First you hear wind, then a stranger, then someone you trust. And if you see them, if a figure stands in the screaming air with hair blown straight up and a mouth like an open wound, don't go out. When you get there, there will be nothing but tiny curls in the snow, each the size of a coin, like the air had been turning in place, waiting its turn to be you. How do you know? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. 2 nights later, Rule 2 broke. Harper was still new enough to smile at the cold. She'd taken to calling us polar rats, a term she claimed was affectionate. She drew Com's night shift on a Category 8. The rest of us tried to sleep with our clothes on. Sometime after 2 a.m., the radio started to whisper. She didn't cut power or log the time. She leaned closer. That's how I picture it, shoulders forward. Eyes narrowed, breath clouding the mic. When the voice said her name, she answered. By 6 a.m., her door was locked from the inside. We forced it. No Harper, no coat missing from the rack, no footprints, just her industrial earmuffs folded with a care that made my skin rise. The foam was still faintly warm. The outer sensors recorded nothing. No door open, no change in interior pressure. No helicopter. The station had been a sealed jar all night. A jar with something gone from inside. Karen gathered us in the mess hall. The storm outside struck the siding in slow, regular hits like a heartbeat too close to the ear. Coffee steamed into a cold room. We've got a Category 9 by midweek, she said, hands braced on the scarred table. You know what that means. No one asked what. If we don't keep the rules, she said, we'll all go with Harper. Illy's eyes were red, the skin around them chafed raw from the muffs. He didn't take them off anymore, not even to speak. I found myself asking, and if we do keep them? Karen looked at the window where frost had mapped itself in little nested spirals. They try harder, she said. That's all they ever do. The next 48 hours were preparation and dread. We taped vents and checked seals. We swapped out light bulbs because failures during storms make people make mistakes. We rehung the laminated rules at every egress and in the head because panic forgets easy things. I drew south egress watch with Illy. The corridor was a tube of old light and new cold. We inventoried the go bags in case of fire while Karen ran us through the bunker drill again, 60 seconds from the first sudden wind shift. We rehearsed in silence until it was muscle, until I could navigate in the dark with my eyes closed, hands right, 2 steps, left, down 4, the lever by the knee. On my break, I went to the library closet, the former supply alcove where people leave paperbacks and old station logs. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof this had happened before and somebody survived anyway. I found a spiral notebook duct taped along the spine. The cover said Lamoureux Winter 15 in tidy block letters. Inside, weather entries, charts, notes. Between paragraph lines, someone had slipped in other writing, smaller. Sideways in the margins. Rule 0, they know you're dead. They'll use the voices you think you've protected by forgetting. If a dead person calls you, that's not a test, that's an invitation. Another page, a different hand messier. The door in north isn't to keep us out of something, it's to keep something in of us. Don't ask. I closed the book. The temperature in the hall felt 2 degrees colder after reading it. Category 9 Eve, aurora that wasn't a curtain so much as vertical wires, green strings plucked by a black hand. The generator coughed mid-shift, a rare hiccup that put us in the crawl space with flashlights and tools. Rule 3 says no one goes out in Category 7 or higher, period, but the generator intake is technically inside. Illy and I worked shoulder to shoulder in the cramped heat, breath bouncing back off metal. When it cleared and we climbed out, a wind shift hit the station like a body check. Doors flexed. Every hinge in the place confessed its age at once. My ears popped and rang. We looked at each other. 60 seconds. We moved right, 2 steps, left, down 4. Lever by the knee timers running in the backs of our heads. By the time we dogged the bunker door, the pressure had normalized again. Drill complete, not a drill. We stood in the dim bunker lights with our lungs trying to climb out. Illy patted his muffs. You heard the shift inside your head, he asked. Yes, he nodded like that was a box ticked, not a comfort lost. Means they're close. The wind built in layers that night. Not a wall of noise, but filaments braided together. Each strand a different temperature of sound. Somewhere between layers, the station intercom clicked and popped. The speaker in the bunk room burped out a fragment of sound, 2 syllables, then died. In the mess, it did it again. Intercom's grounded to hell, I said, crouching to check the wiring. Leave it, Karen said. They'll use anything we listen to. We ran cables anyway, setting up a redundant light route to the bunker, little battery lanterns in milk jugs. Because simple things fail slower. At 0200, the emergency channel crackled. USC 21 inbound, downwind, ice on the blades, request visual. Ellie's face went white under his earmuffs. Rule 3 pounded in my head like a knotting rope. Do not go outside during a Category 7 or higher, no matter what distress signal you hear. Karen didn't touch the mic. Everyone away from comms, she said. The voice tried again, a different cadence. A different accent, then a third, slower, too exactly enunciated. It kept asking for a landing light. We kept not answering. 10 minutes later, the window over the mess showed a black smear shape shouldering the snow, something like a helicopter silhouette moving without rotor wash, a shadow not attached to anything that could throw one. It passed in perfect silence, as if the air itself had been lowered when it went by. By morning, the snow at the south pad was patterned in spirals large enough to see from the roof, as if someone had dragged a fingertip in loops across a cake. From that day on, the voices stopped pretending to be strangers. They learned us. They called from the vents in Karen's father's voice, asking if she'd put chains on the truck. They spoke to Ellie in fast German he hadn't heard since he was 5. They tried me with the voice of my ex, then with the voice of my mother from the voicemail I've refused to delete for 9 years. When that didn't work, they used me again, better this time, thicker with my own breath. At 0313. The intercom clicked on and delivered in Karen's cadence, wind shift in 20, bunker now. Illy looked at her, she shook her head. We didn't move. 20 seconds later, the real wind shift hit. Wrong timing, wrong voice, a test. We sprinted anyway. You have to practice not to listen even when they accidentally tell the truth. We established a countersign on the spot, faces only. No orders obeyed unless you can see a throat work to form them. We wrote it on a note and taped it under Rule 6. Late that afternoon, we tried something stupid because stupidity sometimes pretends to be science. We set up the spectrum analyzer on a bench and fed a sweep into the radio low to high, pure tone. If they're riding the wind on a carrier, he said, maybe we can see a signature. We watched the waterfall display crawl blue-green over the screen. For a few seconds it was clean. Then a comb of teeth appeared at specific intervals, too regular to be noise. The teeth arranged themselves into a lattice, then folded in on a point. A whisper bled through the speaker even with the volume at 0. You always wanted thunder on your birthday. My hand hovered over the kill switch. Nobody knew that but me. I hadn't told it to anyone here, not to my ex, not to the loved ones who are not alive to tell secrets now, not to myself in years. Illy didn't ask. He pulled the plug out of the wall. The analyzer kept running for a breath after power then died. On the phosphor burn of the screen, for one heartbeat, the comb teeth became little spirals. We didn't try that again. As the barometer fell toward an off-chart number, the triple-barred door in the north corridor began to earn its lock. I'd never seen anyone touch the bars other than to dust them, as if touching them longer would heat them up. That night, when the storm inhaled, something knocked from the inside, not frantic, polite, like a guest trying not to wake the house. I stood there longer than a rule allows, watching hoarfrost grow on the hinges, not toward the cold but from it, bulging out in tight little spirals. I could see my breath, and then I could see something else, another plume on the other side of the door, condensing in the seam as if the air on both sides had lungs. Price, Karen said softly behind me. I didn't jump. She has a way of arriving that doesn't disturb air. Don't talk to it. I wasn't, I said, which felt exactly like admitting I wanted to. She nodded at the frost. They practice, she said. We ignore them or we feed them. Night fell early and with intent. The horizon disappeared. The sky pressed its weight down on the roof and laned. The station groaned in a way that wasn't structural. It sounded like a living thing getting comfortable in a too small bed. Somewhere along the west wall, a picture frame rattled 3 times 3 short, too long. In the bunkroom, people stopped pretending to read. Billy sat cross-legged on his mattress with the muffs on, eyes closed, hands on his knees like a monk rehearsing a prayer. Karen spread a large laminated map of the compound on the floor and marked wind shifts with a grease pencil. The marks formed a lopsided flower. In the center of the flower was the bunker. 60 seconds is not a suggestion, she said. It's a math problem, speed of air change plus distance to door plus number of bodies in the hall. She kept her finger on the bunker symbol for a long time, as if afraid that if she let go, it would move. By midnight, the building had a pulse you could feel through the soles of your feet. I walked the south corridor to keep my legs honest. At the egress door, I paused because something was wrong with the cold. It wasn't coming in. It was leaking out like the warmth was being drawn through the seam, drinking itself into the storm. A thin ribbon of vapor curled from under the threshold steam, not frost drawn out as if siphoned. Daniel, the voice came from the hinge line. A close, intimate, the way you speak to someone in the dark, 2 inches from your mouth. It used my name like a pressure point. Open the door, you're losing heat. Behind me, a boot scuffed. Illy, he didn't touch me. He didn't have to. We stepped back together. The ribbon of steam went flat the way a snake goes flat when it decides it has time. Dawn tried and failed. The sky stayed a single bruise. The barometer needle bottomed and kept trying to move. The wind shifts multiplied, smaller, faster, like a heartbeat breaking into fibrillation. Between shifts, the voices got clearer. The intercom sizzled on by itself and declared in my voice this time, "Bunker, now." I didn't move. I looked at Karen. She looked at my face, not the speaker. "Say it again," she said. "Bunker now," I repeated, and she nodded. We moved. Halfway down the hall, a new voice arrived from the ceiling vent, breathy, precise, unfamiliar. "We brought Harper back. She's freezing." Illy's head jerked up. He took one involuntary step toward the door we'd forbidden ourselves. Karen said, "Faces only," without turning her head. He stopped, eyes watering behind chapped lids. The voice at the vent tried a child's tone, then an old woman's. When we didn't answer, it laughed once, a sound like a card in bicycle spokes. We made it to the bunker with seconds to spare as another shift slammed the building from a new angle. Inside, the air was dense with breath and old fear. Lights hummed. The earth around us felt briefly solid in a way the world above had forgotten how to be. No one spoke for a long time, then Karen said, "Category 9 by nightfall." She looked tired in the fluorescent flatness, but not beaten. "They'll try the intercom again, they'll try the doors, they'll try each of us in the voice we'll miss most. The rules do not change." Illy nodded, eyes closed, hands on the muffs. I looked at the laminated rules taped to the wall in here, too. As if words could pin a storm. I don't know when I started to understand that the rules weren't a wall so much as a narrow bridge. We weren't safe behind them, we were balanced on them, and below, the wind was learning our steps. Outside, something hit the north wall in a pattern I knew 3 short, too long, polite, and patient. The sound traveled into the bunker through the memory of the building rather than the material. The fluorescent tubes flickered once, then steadied. "Hold." Karen said it wasn't a command so much as a promise. We held, and the storm leaned closer to hear how long we could. On the third night of the Category 9, the storm reached a pitch that made the entire station feel weightless, as if the wind had wrapped around it and was deciding whether to crush it or carry it away. Then suddenly the pressure flipped. The wind snapped direction like a whip. Rule 6 ignited in my brain before Karen even shouted. 60 seconds. We moved without speaking. Boots pounded steel grating, shoulder to shoulder in the narrow corridor. The walls seemed to pull away from us, each gust tilting the floor a fraction under our feet. Illy was ahead of me, Karen behind, her flashlight beam jittering across the taped-up rules posted on the walls we passed. The bunker door shut behind us with a clang that echoed down the spine of the building. Karen spun the wheel. The sound of the wind outside was suddenly muted. But it was still there pressing. The concrete felt like it was flexing. 2 minutes later, the lights died. The hum of the overhead fluorescents collapsed into nothing, leaving only the sound of our breathing. Then the whispers began. They didn't come through the radio or vents this time. They came inside, a clean, direct thread into the skull, bypassing ears entirely. They didn't just say my name. They went through my memories like a card catalog. My mother's voice, "Danny, don't be late for dinner." My ex's voice, half asleep, laughing at a joke I hadn't told yet, and then my voice. Not one recording, but dozens layered over each other, each slightly wrong, a broken choir singing in perfect rhythm. It wasn't random. They were moving through the room, voice by voice, person by person. I realized with a cold clarity they weren't trying to lure us one by one anymore. They were trying to take all of us at once. Something hit the bunker door from the outside, not a knock, a tug. The wheel turned half a rotation before Karen slammed her weight into it. And then the door jerked open. Wind hit us with the physicality of a living thing, freighted with a laughter sob that rattled my molars. It didn't just blow, it gripped, and standing in the doorway was Harper, or what wore her shape. Her features were stretched as if someone had pulled the skin too tight over the bones. Her eyes had no iris, no pupil, just a packed snow white that reflected nothing. She stepped inside the threshold. The wind curling around her like it was happy to see her. She extended a hand toward me. "Come on," she said. Her voice was warm, coaxing. "It's warm out here." Billy moved before I could. He threw himself at the door, shoving against it, but the wind had hands of its own. Invisible fingers pushed back. Through the widening gap I saw them, dozens of silhouettes in the whiteout. Human shapes, hair streaming straight backward, mouths round and rigid like funnels. The sound coming out of them wasn't a scream. It was a constant, pressurized rush, like water bursting from a hydrant. Lower level, Karen's voice cut through everything. Lower level. I didn't know there was a lower level. We fell into motion, peeling away from the door in a controlled panic. Karen led us to the far end of the bunker, to what I'd thought was a storage wall. She spun 2 recessed latches, pulled, and a section of wall came away to reveal a stairwell dropping into black. We barreled down. My hand skimmed the rail, the metal slick with condensation. Behind us, I heard the bunker door slam once, twice, then the sound of hinges giving way. The wind roared into the stairwell, but each step we took dulled it, as if we were running out of the world itself. At the bottom, another door, thick steel. Karen slammed it shut, spun the wheel. 1 down, 3 more, 4 doors in all, each heavier than the last, each sealing us in deeper. When the last lock engaged, the storm went silent, not muted, gone. The sudden absence was almost painful, like stepping into a vacuum. My ears rang. The air here was heavy and still, the kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat. "This," Karen said quietly, her voice echoing in the sound-killed chamber, "is the only place they can't hear us. But every time we use it, they remember. Next time, they come back stronger." Nobody answered. In the silence, I could hear the soft tick of the emergency light warming in its cage. We stayed there for the rest of the night. No one slept. We didn't speak much either, just the occasional sip of water, the shuffle of someone stretching their legs, the sound of Ali's thumb tapping against the side of his earmuffs in a steady, unconscious rhythm. By morning, the pressure above us had eased. Karen listened at the top door for a long time before unsealing it. The wind was gone. The world had gone back to its winter quiet, the snow covering everything in a flat, blinding sheet. But Harper was gone, so were three others. We searched the station. The outer doors were still locked from the inside. No alarms had triggered, no footprints in the snow. Outside the south wall, where the wind had piled drifts against the siding, we found something else. Spirals. Perfect, deliberate spirals stamped into the snow, each one the width of my chest. They formed lines, curves, letters large enough to read from the roof. We will return. The words stared up at us like a promise. We never found the missing four. We never spoke Harper's name again in the mess hall. Karen replaced the broken bunker door with a heavier model, but none of us believed it would hold forever. I still work at Glacier Point. I tell myself it's because someone has to, someone who's seen what happens when the rules break. The forecast says this winter will bring a Category 10. The meteorology team back at headquarters thinks that just means stronger wind. I know better. It means they've been waiting. It means they've been practicing. The seals will hold. The hinges will hold, our hearts will see. And when the wind shifts sharp and sudden, I'll be counting every second. Not because I believe we can beat them, but because I know they're counting too.